Hey everybody, welcome to the Grow Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Kevin McNulty, and this is your personal development school of growth, where each week my guests and I will bring and break down big ideas and practices that will help you learn, grow, and succeed in life. Thanks for checking us out. Now let the growth begin. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Grow Yourself, where we try to deep dive into personal growth. We invite experts and people with, let's say, compelling stories, all designed to help us learn, grow, change, and frankly, to become better human beings, whatever that is to you. Today's episode is for, I guess you could say it's for high achievers, but we would suggest that it's beyond that, but for right now, we're talking about high achievers, the ones who check every box, who hits every goal and still feels like something's missing, and so, and this might be you, by the way. You've perhaps built an impressive resume, collected, the accolades, pushed yourself harder than, most, but instead of feeling secure and confident, you feel like you're chasing the next thing, or that you're always chasing the next thing. And when you finally get there, by the way, the finish line just moves again. Now, this isn't about imposter syndrome. We did an episode a couple of weeks ago about imposter syndrome. This is really something deeper, frankly, in my way of thinking. It's sort of like this invisible script running in the background of your mind, keeping you, somewhat stuck in a cycle of not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. But what if you could rewrite that script? Well, my guest today, Ryan Christensen, is here to show you how. Ryan is a hypnotist. He's a former intelligence officer and the author of Winner Peace: How to End Inner Conflict and Make Success Inevitable. It's a book that really exposes the hidden battle between your rational and emotional mind and how that battle sometimes fuels the endless pursuit of success. So if you've ever felt like no matter how much you achieve, it's never quite enough, this episode could be for you. So if you would, please welcome my guest, Ryan Christensen. Ryan, thank you so much for being on Grow Yourself.
Kevin, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
It's a pleasure. I'm going to be honest with you, and I kind of told you earlier on that one, I don't really know that much about hypnotism, and some in let's say in the Christian world, or in the religious world, probably is better to say, think that it's sacrilegious, if you will, and there's also a host of others, maybe for good reason, because there's probably many out there using hypnotism more as a toy, or as a game, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I know that it's more than that. And so we're just going to dive into this and keep going. But listen, before we get started, could you just tell the audience a little bit about Ryan Christensen? Who is Ryan? Where are you from, and how'd you grow up, and anything that maybe led you to this point?
Sure. So I grew up in Kansas, which is a great place to live. I wouldn't necessarily suggest living there. Great place to live. Wouldn't necessarily suggest visiting there. Place I grew up in was Wichita. It's about 300,000 people. It's the biggest town in Kansas. Both my folks were from small town Kansas. High school sweethearts, got married. Right when my dad went to college, that kind of thing. And so I grew up in a very traditional, very down home, very Midwestern home. Nice. Folks were great. Little brother was a bit of a jerk, kind of the way it is. Grew up in a cul-de-sac, kind of like a big extended family. It was beautiful. But the problem was I never fit in. I just always knew from a very young age that I was not the same as everybody else.
Interesting.
And just like the world works for everybody else, does not work for me. I can't figure it out. And nobody can really give me the answer either. So by the time that I was about 9 years old, I think it was the first time when I wanted to end my life. It just was not working to that extent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it turns out I have autism. Didn't figure that out until almost 48 years old. But if you can imagine growing up with autism in the Midwest in the 70s and 80s, nobody's even talking about ADHD back then, much less autism. There's no internet. Nobody had any idea. Yeah. So it was very much a situation where I always kind of had to figure out how things work on my own. And that's what kind of led me down to this path that ultimately ended up in the hypnosis space. I had to get out of Kansas. That place didn't work for me. That's why I ran away and joined the Marine Corps. Part of the way I kept myself going that whole time, when you don't really want to be around, is you have to have a reason. reading a lot of like science fiction and military fiction and fantasy stuff. So it's like, okay, I'll be that knight in shining armor. Well, I'll play Batman, right? Batman's life sucks, but it's a really good thing he's around, right?
That's right.
It's a reason for him to be around, right? So joined the Marine Corps. That worked really well for me in terms of like getting me out of Kansas. Again, not particularly good about being Marine because I was autistic and bipolar, didn't know it. Left the Marines in 2002, went over the Air National Guard, was trying to get back in school and do like finance and international business and realized I just can't do widgets and numbers. It just has no meaning for me. Got picked up by a company in DC in 2004. That's when I moved there and started working counterterrorism and counterproliferation. That was my life up until about 2020 and just trying to save the world.
Oh.
Oh, excuse me. Right. But about 2019, 2020, I'm realizing the world does not want to be saved. And this is a problem because that's my reason to keep on going. And so I had to find out something else to do. Started doing a bunch of work on myself, ran into hypnotist in one of these men's groups I was in. It's talking about toxic shame, emotional baggage, and, Catholic, got some of that. Did a session with him and just like felt lighter. Carrying around 50 pounds of stuff, get rid of 20 pounds, everything's just easier, right?
Yeah.
It really caught my attention because I get certified as a hypnotist pretty quickly and start working with people. And so that's what I did in February 2020. Right after that, everything shuts down because of the pandemic. I can't work from home because everything I do is classified. So I just got nothing but time. Start working with some guys, seen some really big changes really fast, and found I had talent for it. Got some more training, started my business April 2020, went full-time October 2020. It's been what I've been doing full-time ever since.
Wow. That's a beast move there. I mean, to make something happen that quickly and that hard of a turn, that's cool. I can relate to it after I got out of the Air Force. Did something very similar in terms of such a massive change in careers and so forth. So, well, that's fascinating. So you say you're obviously on the high functioning autistic scale or part of the spectrum. I believe the same for Elon Musk, if I'm not mistaken,
Yep.
correct?
Yes.
So because I would never know it if I came across you that you are on the spectrum. How does it affect you, or how did it affect you?
Well, that's a really amazing question. The best way I can put it, I was hanging out with some folks a couple years ago, not long after I got the diagnosis, and was saying, I just got diagnosed with autism. One of the guys comes up and said, really interested, like what your experience is like with that. I was like, well, it's really hard for me to kind of see some details around people, but I can patterns just are like blatant to me. They're just bloody obvious. And he's like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's like, I'm colorblind. I'm like, what? What do you mean? It's like, well, he's colorblind, and because he can't see that nuance of color, like it's just not something he can perceive. He sees the shapes better, the patterns better. So he's like, why are you people not seeing this thing? Wow. Why are you not seeing this, right? Because he's not distracted by the colors, he can't perceive them. I'm like, oh, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Very interesting.
Before they came out with the DSM-5, I probably would have been diagnosed with Asperger's rather than autism.
Okay.
They just kind of rolled it all together and said it's one big spectrum. I don't know. I think they're lazy, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah. But the way I kind of think about it is like being socially colorblind. And that there's all this kind of like nuance to human interaction that I just simply cannot perceive. Just blind to, right? Which is a real problem because you all do see it and you all are cueing off it, right? It's like if you're trying to put together your outfit and you're colorblind, that can look really messy, right? 3 different shades of green and everybody's like, what the heck are you doing, right? And they're talking about this wonderful, like this mauve or this lavender, and you're like, what are you talking about, right? And you're like going to a wine tasting, right? And it's just level 3 sommelier, they just talk about the terroir and how that's free. It's like, yes, it does in fact taste like red wine, right? That's kind of my experience.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the patterns are just bloody obvious to me because that's the least level of detail I can perceive, right? Wow. And the beautiful thing is that's kind of like how I've learned how to navigate life and what's made me really successful, not in the intelligence world, but in the hypnosis world. Because if there's a pattern of behavior, there's something that drives it.
Very interesting.
Right? There's something that creates that. It's a black box that creates a particular output, right? So when I'm trying to figure out how the world works, I can't listen to you guys tell me how the world works. You say, oh, here's the rules, and I play by the rules, and that is not how you all play, right? There's the explicit rules, that's what you tell me things are, and then there's implicit rules, which is how things actually work, right? You join a new job, they hand you the employee manual, say, here's how things work, and then the boss walks away, and you throw that thing in the trash and say, hey, Bob, what's going on, right? Yeah, you just try, it's exactly, and the thing is, like, that's been my experience since I was a kid, right? But if there's a pattern behavior, there's something that drives it. All I got to do is watch enough inputs, enough outputs, and I can see what's happening in between.
Yeah. I mean, one of, frankly, my favorite coaches and people, Tony Robbins, I mean, that's that's been part of his great success, really, is understanding patterns. He talks a lot about patterns and these sorts of things. And I find that fascinating. Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. So you did kind of say before we get more into the talk of high achievers, you did say that when you were in the Intel arena that you figured out that the world didn't want to be saved. Is that what I
Yeah.
heard you say?
Yeah.
What did you mean by
Yeah.
that?
Well, fundamentally, like the game, when you're doing like counterterrorism, counterproliferation, when you're doing that kind of intelligence work, that's say more proactive, right? You're trying to keep things from happening rather than like reacting to when things are happening, right? The goal really is to kind of like
Yeah.
create space for like policymakers and diplomacy and all those people to like do their job and like bring the tensions down or bringing things to a better resolution, right? And I was realizing like I'm spending all this time, energy, and effort. I'm sacrificing a lot in my personal life in order to make this stuff happen. And not only is there not any progress being made, but everything's getting worse, right? Think about like I've been doing this stuff, counterterrorism from 2004 to 2011. Did things get better in Iraq? No. Did things get better in Afghanistan? No. Did things get worse after with Syria and everything else? Yes, right? Like talk about counterproliferation. Had the Iranian nuclear deal, that thing fell apart. Like spending all this time, energy, and effort to create space is it's just not being used right.
Yeah.
And so it's very much a situation of like, why am I spending all this time, energy, and effort? Why am I throwing myself under the bus if the people who are supposed to make this thing work on the back end aren't doing that?
Very interesting. Yeah. No, I can feel that. I mean, and it makes sense to me. I completely get it. So let me, if I can carry you into this world and talk about about high achievers and hypnosis and
Yeah,
these other sorts of things. If I may, I want to guide you through at least 3 points here, and I have other questions, but
sure.
I took them directly from your website, Ryan, because they were really compelling, and they, in and of themselves, not just actually ask questions, but open up a lot of questions. So let me just start off by reading this that starts off with a compelling question. And again, this is, and you'll of course recognize it straight from your website. It says, "When will enough be enough? You've achieved more than most, reached heights others only dream of, but success hasn't brought peace, only more pressure to perform. You're exhausted, questioning the endless chase despite your best efforts, supplements, cold showers, therapy, even plant ceremonies. You're still just barely feeling okay most days. The truth is, you're not alone. Many high performers find themselves in a similar situation." So, having said that, let me just ask you the question then: when will enough be enough?
The terrifying answer is never. And the reason is this. And fundamentally, like this is like the core thing that I realized that unlocked kind of the path that I eventually went down that created the book and kind of what I do today. And that is that we're almost everything we're trying to do as high achievers is to change how we feel, is to change our emotional experience, right? We want to feel better. We want to feel good, right? We feel like we're not good enough. We want to do something to make it so that we do feel good enough, right? We want to change our emotional experience through our actions. Makes sense. The problem is that the emotions we experience are like a signal from our unconscious mind saying, here's what I'm seeing in the world, this is what it means, and this is what I need you to do in response. So it's essentially your unconscious mind's or your emotional mind's conclusion about what things are. Ben Shapiro had this beautiful saying, facts don't care about your feelings. Like gravity works, it doesn't matter what you feel about it, right?
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is that feelings don't care about your facts. Okay? Right? Because you're looking actually at kind of two different scales. And this is one of the beautiful things. It's like trees versus forest, right?
Yeah.
Your rational mind is looking at trees, it's looking at details, individual events, individual problems, individual situations, individual traumas. Your emotional mind is looking at patterns over time. It's looking at the forest rather than the trees. Okay? So since you're seeing the world from two different perspectives at the same time, you're going to end up with two different conclusions because you're using two different tools from two different perspectives. Okay? And you want that emotional mind to work really quickly because that's that pattern recognition piece. It's that shortcut thing so your mind can understand what the situation is and react as quickly as possible, right? That's what it's built to do. The way it communicates is in those like feelings, those intuitions, and something's not right, or there's actual emotion.
Yes.
Right? That's kind of how it communicates to us what that's going on. So the problem is, if things from the forest level says, I'm not good enough, but I got a mansion, it's really say, I've got a mansion, I'm good enough. But if things haven't changed on the forest level, you're still not.
Interesting.
Okay. There's this beautiful principle in hypnosis, we call it the critical factor. It says that the unconscious mind or the emotional mind judges true and false based on what it already believes. Okay. If it matches, it's true, it gets accepted. If it doesn't match, it's false, it gets ignored. If the belief is, if the feeling is, I'm not good enough, does that match with I'm successful? No.
No.
Gets ignored. Does it match with I got $1 million? No. Gets ignored.
Very interesting.
Right? So you can never prove that feeling wrong. Why? Because it's only judging true and false based on what it already believes. So it's ignoring all evidence that's wrong.
Yeah. Ironically, I believe, at least it's been my observations, that really high achievers, they would deny this idea of feelings because, they would be like, well, what's feelings got to do, what's love got to do with it, and this, that, and the other.
Yep.
But you're saying that it's all about the feelings in a sense.
Yes.
They're just not recognizing the feelings.
Or they're running from them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, we talk about emotions as pain, right?
Yeah.
This hurts. You broke my heart. How could you hurt me this way?
True.
Well, what is pain? Pain is the thing you're supposed to move away from. And if you've got this thing of I'm not good enough and it doesn't go away, you've got to run harder and harder and harder to the point where sometimes you just ignore or deny that it's even there. I can't even look at that. I can't even acknowledge that that's a true thing. Talk about like this idea of like shadow work, the part of you just deny, right? Or the part of you can't admit. Mm-hmm. Same kind of principle, except instead of part of self, part of your life, part of that output. It's like, I cannot listen to this anymore. So we shove it away, we ignore it, we pretend it doesn't exist. But there's a beautiful book called Never Enough by a guy named Andrew Wilkinson. He's a venture capitalist up in Canada. It's about his journey from being a barista making $6 an hour to being a billionaire. Right? And his whole story was grew up poor. He says, okay, no problem. I just got to make enough money and I'll be good. So he gets to the point where he's a billionaire. He's looking around. It's like, man, I am feeling just as anxious and insecure having $1 billion as I did when I was making $6 an hour.
Wow.
And he's looking around. It's like all my other billionaire friends, pretty much the same way. 100 million, yep. 10 million, yep. Multi-billionaire, yep. Everybody's the same situation. He's like, holy crap. I'm like, yeah. If becoming a billionaire is not enough success to make you feel good enough, that ain't how that works.
But listen, no, I'm tracking exactly what you're saying. And again, I hope the audience will put the politics aside for a moment, and let me again ask about or mention Elon Musk. He very clearly, now some can believe it or not believe it, but he very clearly in an interview said, if you're trying to, sway me with money, and there was something else and stuff or whatever he said. I think he even threw in a couple of, F-bombs there or something, that he doesn't care. He's not driven by money. And I believe that.
Yeah.
It's kind
100%.
of along, and it's along the lines of what we're talking about here, right? Money is not, it's not, whether he's running away from it, that reality or whatever the case might be, it's just.
Yes, and I'll tell you how.
Is it? Please do.
Yeah. So number one, Elon grew up in a horrible, horrible situation in South Africa. Like bullied, abused, like just an absolutely terrible situation, right? So he's got that same driver that I talk about, that Batman origin story. Like, I got to get away from this, right? Massively painful. But he's incredibly intelligent.
Yeah.
And so money's not going to mean much to him because like money kind of isn't a thing after a certain point. You got what I need, cool. Then I really don't care about that. What's he concerned about? The light of human consciousness being extinguished. That's this fear.
Wow.
Right? He talks about that. He says,
no, he does. I get it. Yeah.
He does,
that's,
right?
Just like the way he said that, though.
Everything he does is to make sure that does not happen. That's his big fear. That's the thing he's trying to solve. All the technologies around that. Tesla, bringing Starlink, SpaceX, right? All of it is get us the heck out of this planet and make us interplanetary so that what happens here isn't the end of humanity.
Goodness gracious. I mean.
But that's still what? Running from pain, running from fear. Like, oh my God, I can't let this happen.
Yeah.
Just a different flavor.
Yeah. Boy, there's a real fine line there, isn't it? From,
yes.
from running from fear versus pursuing, a pleasure. I guess if you want to put it in that sense.
Yeah, but that's actually just a beautiful analogy to it. Because if you're thinking about, emotions are pain, well, that means emotions are also
Hmm.
pleasure, right? So
Yeah.
feeling good is a pleasure. That's a pull,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
But we know from psychology and various things that pain is essentially 3 times more powerful than pleasure,
Yes.
right? Pain of a loss is like 3 times greater than that of a gain.
Yeah.
So what happens with someone like Elon Musk and all these high performers, you got this wicked, wicked thing going on where there's this pain they're running from, the painful past, not having enough, whatever that happens to be. And they've got this carrot. There's this thing they're good at. They love doing this thing. They're really good at it. They're getting all kinds of rewards. Well, it's telling them, man, you're amazing. So there's this huge pull and a massive, massive, massive push. Carrot and a stick.
Yes.
That's why these people can't take their foot off the gas, why they can't get off that treadmill. Because
Oh
if I
my.
stop chasing the carrot, here comes the stick.
Here comes the stick. Yeah.
And because you're getting all this external reinforcement and all this external praise, all the signals you're getting from the outside world are you're on exactly the right track. Keep going. Holy crap, we can't believe how good you are. And the only thing that is going to tell you you're wrong is that little voice in the back of your head, which
So,
is really easy to ignore when everyone tells you you're doing awesome.
okay, fair. Yeah, fair enough. No, that's good. So again, with with Elon Musk, does he? And again, I'm not trying to turn this conversation on Elon Musk. I'm trying to stay in this lane that you're talking about.
Sure.
I
He's a
mean,
great example. He's a
high
beautiful example.
achievers. I don't know if you can get more than that. But the
Exactly.
question, the question though is that in your way of thinking, is he bothered by all the hate that he's getting? Is this
No.
it's just he's just keeps moving, huh?
Well, it's just an obstacle he has to overcome to achieve his goal.
Yeah. And this might be a little bit where his autism actually plays a
Oh yeah.
positive role, right? That
Yeah.
folks with autism, and I'm not by any shape or form an expert, not even close, but that there's a social component to
Yeah.
that where those who are on the autistic spectrum, they, in some form or fashion, seem to lack a little bit, if I may use those words, in terms of their social construct, I guess, or perception. And I'm sure it must play out in different ways. Like, for instance, you have no, you're you look very social to me. So I don't,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't perceive anything different, but again, it may play out in different ways, right? So please.
So what I would say is that's actually not true. It's not that we lack an understanding of social stuff. It's not that we lack that. It's that a couple different things. Okay. Number one, the way things are normally done never works for us.
Oh,
Just flat out doesn't.
hello.
Right. Just doesn't. Right.
Okay.
So after a while, a lot like what happened to me is like, okay, the world doesn't work. The normal stuff doesn't work. So I'm just not even going to worry about the normal thing because it's not going to work for me anyway. I got to figure out my own way that things work.
Got it.
The other piece is if you're trying to interact with people and trying to be social and it just never works and never works, it's just like, okay, at some point you say, okay, screw it, I give up. Right? I'm just not even going to bother because it's too hard. I'm not getting what I need. It's too painful to bash my head against that wall. Right?
Got it.
So for a lot of it, it's just like, I'm going to give up because I can't make this work. And we just like retreat. We become antisocial. We just don't engage.
I see.
Or we engage only in spaces where we've got like a lot of common interests, which is why like we end up like in the science fiction space or the engineer space or whatever that happens to be. Everybody who's autistic has like the one thing is like that's your jam. For Elon, it's like technology. For me, it's actually human behavior. Like that's my autistic thing of like I
got you.
want to know how people work, which is why it's so easy for me to be very social and everything else because my whole focus was I need to figure out how people work because the biggest thing, most important thing for me is connection. Right? So I was trying to engineer how to create connection in a world that does not work anything like the way it's supposed to.
That's crazy.
Elon Musk, on the other hand, and I especially, like, there's a certain point where if you get to that point where you can actually finally own and accept that this is who I am, this is who I am, this is what I am, like I'm done pretending, then it's not that you stop caring what people think, it's that it doesn't hit you as much because you know it's not actually about
Yeah.
you. Right?
That's an interesting point right there. And because I'll be honest with you, I probably haven't got to that point as much as I'd like to say that I have.
Yeah.
I will admit now this might reflect differently though. The older I get, the less I give a
Yep.
shit. So I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know if that's just a function of I'm tired of worrying about it, but I still think I still Tell me the point you were just making again. I kind of lost track with what
Sure.
I had another thought going on.
Once you accept yourself fully, it's
Yeah,
not that you don't care what people think. It's that you know it's not actually a reflection of you.
perfect.
Doesn't It's not actually commentary on you.
Yes, I don't think I've actually gotten there. I still
It's
think I
hard to,
care
man.
too much. You know.
The thing is like this. Talked about how the unconscious mind judges true and false based on what you already believe. Okay. And so if you have this belief underneath, for whatever reason, that there's still something wrong with you, still something about you can't accept, right? Then your mind is still kind of looking for confirmation that this thing is true. So stuff happens and it pushes this button,
Yeah.
right? It says, oh, this is still here,
Yeah.
right? This
Very
is still a
interesting.
part of you that it's like, this is still true, whether you really
Yeah.
want it to be or not. Oh, I thought it was past that. Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
still there, right?
Yeah.
So you only get to that point of like equanimity, really is what it is. It's like, it's not that I don't care, it's just like, it doesn't bother me
Right.
when there's no buttons to push.
Yeah.
And that only
Yes.
happens if you've actually done the work to like really get in, take a look at all that
Yeah.
stuff you don't like,
Yeah.
own it
Yeah.
and make it yours, right? If I can own every single mistake I made, if I can own every flaw and inadequacy in every way I don't measure up, if I can just
Yeah.
own that,
Yeah.
then yes, you can tell me about it. It's like, yes, that is 100% true. And
I get
right?
that. No, I get that.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating. No, I completely get what you're saying there, and it makes complete sense. So before I move into this next point, I
Mhm.
want to ask you about this and maybe just ask you as objectively as you can. And again,
Sure.
I hope folks don't get triggered. If you do, I'm not going to save you from yourself. But
Exactly.
I'm fascinated by Trump. I
Hmm.
think he's a fascinating guy. Again,
Very.
regardless of the politics, what is your assessment of him when we're talking about this, high achiever mentality? I mean, they're completely different people, but
Yes.
I mean, there's another
Okay.
guy that just doesn't seem to quit.
He doesn't stop. No, he doesn't. He doesn't. Like Trump is a fascinating guy. Like
He
I
is.
initially started out like I really didn't like the guy
Yeah,
when he's campaigning. Like he's brash.
yeah. He's a
He's
jerk
got that like
sometimes.
he's a jerk. He really is. He really is. But I realized it's like wait a second. As I've watched him over the past like 8 years, 18 years or so, it's like you start to realize like man, yes he's brash. Yes he's got an ego. That's a big part of it.
Yep.
But he's a legacy guy.
Mm,
He's a builder. He's a legacy guy.
I see.
Right. Look at his family. Right.
I see what you're saying.
He's like he's it's like old school nobility in a lot of ways,
Mm,
right? He's got this big thing. He's a big guy. He's a big player. He's coming for money, but he's a builder. He's trying to create. He wants to create a legacy. He's talking about generational stuff. He's talking about things that last for decades and centuries,
yeah.
right? When we talk about his buildings, we talk about his resorts, we talk about what he's trying to do with the country. He's a
Yeah.
builder, and he
Yeah.
wants that sucker to run right.
Yeah.
And of course, moving that space, you're going to move very, very differently.
Yeah.
That's war
Yeah.
essentially.
Oh yeah.
Business is war, right?
Yeah.
So when you've been at war for like basically your entire life, you move a certain way. You
Yeah.
got a certain swagger,
Yeah.
right? And I think a lot of his brashness is kind of that testing you do between guys. Kind
I
of
agree
poke
with
you a bit
that.
and see what you could take,
I
right?
agree with that. Makes
Right. And
sense.
so because if I'm at war and I'm always in competition, I want to know who's on the other side of the table. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna poke you a bit, see what happens. Oh, you fall apart. Perfect.
Yeah.
What an edge do I have over you if
Yeah.
you can't even control that? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So brash, but man, he's incredibly calculated about it.
Yeah. No, he
You'll
really
see him pivot. You'll see him pivot like, oh, I'm gonna insult you. As soon as you're on my side, you're the best person ever.
and won't apologize for either one of the
No,
pivots that he
no,
makes.
no,
It's
not
a
at
very
all.
interesting. I think that this is really interesting that I believe
Hmm.
that like you, there are things that just make me cringe. I mean, about
Hmm.
him, things that he says in public. Um, particularly like when he was in the first debate with
Sure.
Biden I was like, oh my God. But here's the thing. I think that and you correct me here if you
Hmm.
will, that if we're talking about, let's just say, negative emotions and behavior are up
Hmm.
here and positive as well. That I mean, maybe with some hard work you can, but if you pull down some of his negative emotion and negative
Hmm.
behaviors, I think you pulled down the essence of who he is. In other words, you take some of that away, and he's not the same person that many would say makes him so effective.
I don't know about that. So that's an interesting debate that I've had, or kind of like playing around with people. It's like, okay, if you're on that treadmill, driven by
Let me
pain,
stop you
got the
real quick
carrot.
there.
Sure, sure.
Let me clarify this because I may not have articulated it well. But let's just say when it comes to like antidepressants, Zoloft and some of these others, when you take that stuff, it doesn't just take down the negative emotions. It doesn't just help with the depression. It pulls down positive emotions too. People
Yeah,
talk about this all the time that
yeah,
I just don't feel anything really. So you might
yes.
have a better personality because it has dragged down the negative emotion. So that's sort of the point that I'm saying is that you pull down some of this stuff that makes this makes Trump what he is, then he's no longer that effective.
So I think that, okay, well, there's a couple of pieces here. Number one, I kind of want, you got that carrot, you got the stick, right? The stick
Yes.
is 3 times stronger than the carrot. A lot of people are high achievers. Like, what happens if you take away the pain? What's going to drive me forward? And that's a legitimate concern because you're not being driven forward. You're just being pulled by that pleasure, right?
Good point.
But the thing is that doing that actually opens up the space, because if you're running from a pain, the only thing you can do is go straight away from it. Anything else is still more pain. If I try to go right angles, it's still more pain, right? So the only thing I can do is run directly away, and it limits my options.
Okay.
So in a lot of ways, by taking away that pain, that kind of opens up the field of play a lot,
I see.
right? Because you don't have to move directly away from the thing, right?
I see.
So there is a thing where, like, as you do this work and as you kind of crank down the triggers and the buttons and you deal with some of that underlying pain, it opens up the field of play. You're able to move in a lot more, in a much bigger field, in more directions. With Trump, though, I think that one of the reasons he's as brash in public is that his opponents, one of their strengths is the illusion, the myth of it's all legitimate, everybody's playing nice, so forth and so on. They're hiding behind politeness.
No,
They're
I
hiding
agree with
behind
that.
social rules, right?
100%.
So I think a lot of his like aggression is to grab them and pull them into light where they can't hide anymore, to force them out of that space where they actually have that strength. Right. So if you look at a lot of stuff he was doing, like with Biden and Clinton during the debates, and even with the Republicans in the debate stage, it's like, no, like, I'm going to call you out on your stuff. I'm not going to play polite because that's how you're hiding. So I'm going to drag your stuff into light and make people see it.
Oh, yeah. Practically, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. So I think it's much more tactical, much more sophisticated than people that give you credit for.
Okay.
Right.
So this, I'm getting you now that it's
Yeah.
not this subconscious behavior that's going on. It's very,
No.
it's very, you
Very
couldn't even say
calculated.
planned anymore, but it is calculated.
Calculated,
in the way
yeah,
that
yeah.
he's developed this ability, and it's pretty innate anymore.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Look, I've never heard that before, and I'm glad I asked you about it. So let me move on to the second one. Okay. So then the second point that one of the points that comes off of your website, it says this: the hidden struggle of high performers. Most of us have been conditioned to seek validation through achievements to succeed our way out of insecurity, but excuse me, let me start this over. The hidden struggle of high performers. Let me do it one more time.
No worries.
The hidden struggle of high performers. Most of us have been conditioned to seek validation through achievements to succeed our way out of insecurity. But the victory is fleeting and satisfaction slips away. This endless pursuit leads to exhaustion and a nagging sense of not good enough, because the reality is you're trapped playing a game with yourself that you can never win. What do you mean by that?
Well, it kind of goes back to that discussion we were having originally of like trying to prove that feeling wrong. I feel like I'm not good enough. I'm going to try to prove it wrong.
Okay.
And of course, your mind ignores all the evidence that it's wrong. So that just never really works. And what's really happening is if I feel like I'm not good enough, I cannot accept that as an answer, right? Because if I'm not good enough, I can't get what I need in the world. Like, that's just not an acceptable answer. So we try and create a new one. Find something we're good at, start going, right? We try and find a way to put points on the board to prove that feeling wrong. Cool. So we set a goal and we run and we achieve it and we feel amazing because we had this accomplishment. We feel that pride. Perfect. But that feeling doesn't go away. Okay, well, that must be it. I got to set a new goal. Achieve it, get the pride, get the accomplishment. Still don't feel good enough after a while. And that's that constant
Yeah.
treadmill, right?
And
Well, if
that
you're
should be
always,
relatively natural, though, right? I mean, there at least some
well,
component of that, right? Because
sure.
otherwise, I'd be satisfied, sit down on the couch, and never get back
Would
up.
you though? Would you though? And that's the thing that I actually deny. That's not actually true.
Okay.
The difference is, and it kind of goes back to that carrot and the stick, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing it to feel good about yourself and you're trying to fix how you feel, that's driven by pain, right? You're trying to make that pain go away. You're trying to make that discomfort go away. You're doing the right thing, going out there, achieving, creating stuff for the wrong reason, to feel good. If you're doing the right thing for the wrong reason, you're going to do it the wrong way. Because the way you do it is always to meet that underlying need. And when you're doing it from pain, you can never do the right thing for the right reason.
Yeah. Wow.
Right? But you look at, even Elon Musk is kind of doing this from pain, but let's take a look at this from the perspective of like Alex Hormozi was a big time entrepreneur on influencers. He's in his 30s with his wife. He and his wife have a consortium company. He's making like $600 million a year in revenue. Crazy.
Who is this
right?
again?
Alex Hormozi, H-O-R-M-O-Z.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Perfect. Right? He's got this background, really critical father, got to the point where it's like he was basically wanting to end his life because everything was worth it. Okay, cool. I'm going to prove my dad wrong by making more money than he ever did. And that started his entrepreneurial career and absolutely crushing it, right? But the only thing he can do is put points on the board. More revenue, bigger, bigger, bigger. All he can do is like go spot off to put more points on the board. Then you look at Elon Musk. He's not putting points on the board. He doesn't care. He's trying to save humanity, right?
Wow. I got you.
Playing a very different game. It's not about being measured. It's about I'm chasing this big goal, this big mission. I've got a dream. I've got a North Star I'm chasing, right? Yeah. For me, I went from trying to build a 7-figure business to after I did all this work on myself and like took care of that like underlying pain, got rid of that whole Batman origin story, need to run. I've moved from that to my mission is now I want to end human suffering and unleash the fullness of human potential to the maximum extent possible for me to engineer in this lifetime. That is a powerful, powerful drive.
It is very powerful.
And it looks a heck of a lot different than I want to make 7 figures.
It really does. It
right.
properly sets the perspective, correct?
Yes. And because it's to the extent possible for me to engineer in this lifetime, I'm not driven by I have to save the world. I'm trying to solve my pain. It's a how much can I do? How much can I create? How far can I go? Do you need to measure? Yes. But it's kind of like Michael Phelps, the swimmer, the Olympic swimmer. Which let me say you're like crushed. You got like 1 billion gold medals, like 30,000. Like guy was phenomenal,
it was
right?
Crazy, yeah.
But you don't see any pain in him. You don't see the aggression and the insecurity and all that stuff.
I see.
Why? Because he had this talent, recognized it really young. Everybody gave him all the support he needed, and he's just been doing, maximizing this God-given talent he has. He's doing it for the love of the game, right? You look at that, compare like Mike Tyson, Michael Jordan. Conor McGregor, very different feel.
Yeah.
Guys are absolutely on top of their game, but man, you look at the ego and the insecurity and the everything, the mess that these guys got driven by versus love of the game.
But would fair enough, but would the drive still be the same if they didn't have that stick behind them, if you will? Would they?
Yes,
would Michael Jordan be Michael Jordan?
And that's the thing is, he probably could, because you don't get that good unless you have the talent.
Fair enough.
Right? You cannot be that good unless you have the talent. The question is, are you being driven, pushed by pain?
Yeah.
Or are you being pulled by purpose?
Yeah, boy, that's interesting. I got to tell you though, Ryan. So, I coach tennis. Everybody who pays attention to this knows that I do that. I work with middle schoolers, primarily, and high schoolers. But and so I pay attention a lot to, for instance, sports, but particularly tennis. And we all know, but I think it's the case for most sports, but because it's an individual sports, your psyche is they say it's well, I mean, I don't know what the right statistic is, but it's 60, 70% mental. You hear all these sorts of things. Whatever the figure is, it's true that so much of it is mental.
Yeah.
And so I guess I come back to this question about Michael Jordan or some of these other really high achievers.
Oh man, think about this in tennis. What was the guy, McEnroe, I think his name was, back in the day? Yeah. Like really, he just loses stuff on the court all the freaking time.
Speaking of a jerk, yeah.
Right, speaking of a jerk, right? But you look at him versus like Andre Agassi.
Federer or Agassi, yeah.
Right. right? Look at how they move. Look at how they move the world. Like McEnroe was good.
Yeah.
There was no way somebody like that was ever going to be as good as Agassi.
100%
Because he got all those freaking triggers and buttons and everything else he's got.
Yeah.
He's driven by all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Can you leverage that? Absolutely. But again, if there's a pain, you can only go one direction. What happens to these guys after their career ends?
Yeah, many of
What
them.
happens to what happens to these guys? You know, they're on the treadmill. Great. What happens when the treadmill breaks?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys fall apart. You see it's like in the military all the time, right?
Yep.
The military is this guy's life. As soon as he gets out, just like everything crumbles.
Yep. That's true.
Because they don't
That's
have a way to get away
statement.
from that pain anymore. They don't have that. There's no way to justify that stuff anymore, right?
So they'll essentially look for a new way to
Got to find a new treadmill.
new treadmill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which again, if it's not sorted out, if not put in context, if it's not better understood, the self-awareness comes up, then they just they just stay on the treadmill. I mean, right? And
You have
if
to.
they're lucky, it leads to some sort of success or maybe some sort of an epiphany, but many of them maybe just,
Yeah.
die on
And
the
think about
treadmill.
this. Yeah, and that's the thing is like, if the pain is still there, you still have to run from it,
Yeah.
right?
Well, good. Yeah.
And what happens if you can't escape it? Becomes too much. Down the hole you go, and that's when people start checking out,
Okay. Got it.
right?
Yep. Got it.
Because the other trap is the cage, right? Where you're kind of like boxed in by pain. There's this big gap. You're really not able to take action, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is that people that get stuck in the cage, they've learned to endure that pain, right? There's a certain amount of just being able to cope with that. Guys on a treadmill never had to deal with it. So they never developed that ability to sit in that pain. So when somebody's treadmill breaks, when their like career ends, when they like, the success doesn't work anymore,
Yeah.
they don't really have many options left. That is a really, really tough situation because they've never had to sit in that pain.
Yeah. That's
They've always
very
been able to
interesting.
avoid it.
Well,
right?
you talk about people like, if you're familiar with these names, Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, some of, even Djokovic, but I'll speak of those two that have retired, clearly two of the best ever in history.
Yep.
But I think they had it right, though. You look at Federer, well, look at either one of them. They're such well-rounded people. They have, beautiful spirits.
Yes.
They're driven like crazy in a different way.
Yes.
But they have soared. But it looks like their lives led them to this place, and people, maybe to your point, identified their talent, supported them, helped them, and boy,
Yes.
what good people they are. And I throw
Yeah.
Djokovic in there as well.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example.
Okay.
The thing you said, they've got these amazing lives,
Yeah.
which means that the rest of their life is on point,
Yes.
which means that they're not just running from one thing
Yes.
because they're able to have all of it,
Yes.
right? Those are not people that are driven by pain. They're not on the treadmill. They've just got a shiny carrot they're chasing. That's very different,
Very interesting.
right?
Yes, it
Because
is.
again, pain 3 times powerful than pleasure. It's a lot easier to walk away from this than it is to turn and face this,
Yeah.
right?
And there's a physiological reason, right, or a
Sure.
neurological reason why that pain is stronger
Yes.
than pleasure because,
Yes.
right, we're sort of wired that
this
way to
physical-
protect
yes.
ourselves and so forth.
Exactly. Pain is that physical thing of like, I am actually physically damaged and my survival is actually threatened.
Yes.
The trick is when we define emotions as pain and pleasure, we're then kicking in that survival circuit
Yes.
and having our mind, our body treat it as a threat to physical survival. In a lot of ways it is,
Okay.
right? Because if
Yes.
you're in too much psychological pain and you can't
Yes.
escape it,
Yes.
that's when you walk down that road of ending your life.
Yes. Hence why, some people, they either lose it or act inappropriate in situations where you're like, why are you getting so emotional about this? Because psychologically, there's
Yes.
there's a threat of survival there.
Yes,
At
yes.
least their brain thinks there's a threat.
Well, it is a threat to their physical survival.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Right? They're reacting to it because it is. But the threat they're reacting to is the threat to their self-image.
Okay.
The threat of being forced to face these parts about themselves they don't like that are so painful for them.
That's crazy. So let me jump on the third. Go ahead. Please.
Yeah, like that right there. The idea that your mind is protecting you from emotional pain at the same level as it is from physical pain, and that most of the threats are to your identity and your ego, explains like 99% of the stupid stuff we do.
I agree with that 100%. As a coach, as a personal and professional development
Yeah.
coach, I've dealt with a lot of leaders and such. And when people now ask me the questions, what's the number one problem? I say
Ego.
ego, 100%.
100%.
Let me read this
100%.
third one to you.
Sure.
That again comes from your website, and it still may, because I haven't read fast enough to figure out whether we've already discussed this. But let me throw it out there because I think it's very compelling. It says the root problem is the title. The real issue lies in our subconscious beliefs and emotional patterns, not our rational mind. No amount of success or proving your worth rationally can change a deep-seated belief that you're not good enough. Conventional methods like therapy, coaching, willpower alone often fall short because they don't address the core programming driving our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Creating lasting transformation requires addressing your subconscious mind where these limiting beliefs are rooted, and I can't agree with that more.
Yeah.
Please tell us about that. We're sort of talking about it, but go ahead.
Yeah. So the principle here again goes back to critical factor, your unconscious mind judging true or false based on what already believes. Okay. The thing is, up until about 4, 5, 6 years old, you don't really have that rational reasoning mind online. Just don't have a lot of sophistication in the mental models you're using to navigate and interpret the world. So all of the understandings that you're creating about yourself and the world are essentially emotional ones, very simplistic, which is where, like, you're moving around the world, you can't get what you need for whatever reason. Oh, I must not be able to get it because I'm not good enough, because there's something wrong with me. Therefore, I don't deserve it. Most natural conclusion to draw. But the thing is, like, I've drawn this conclusion. I've confirmed with all this pattern data. Therefore, that must be the pattern. That must be why this is happening. Fair enough. That is now truth.
Oh, my.
Right? That is now truth against which everything has been compared since then. So if this is truth, how can you prove this wrong? You can't. The way you have to do is get down to where that sucker is and change it there.
Yeah.
You got to get down to subconscious mind.
Yeah.
That's why hypnosis. And that's why I do things the way I do. We typically talk about hypnosis in terms of suggestion and persuasion. Right? I can suggest things to you. I can make you do things by telling you to do stuff, right? And there's some truth to that, because hypnosis is kind of dropping that wall, turning off the critical factor, which doesn't mean you say yes easier. It means you don't automatically say no. So there's some space, right? There's some space to play. But the thing is, if I'm creating suggestions, creating new ideas, I'm putting good stuff down there, right? I'm going to tell you how awesome you are. Great. Now you have a new belief set that's competing with an old belief set. And the old belief set has a lot more evidence. Right, has a lifetime of evidence versus this.
Because you thought about it a lot more, right? And
if you've got it, you've created a pattern. You said this is a pattern. I'm recognized pattern recognition. I'm seeing this everywhere.
Yeah,
I've seen this a lot more than I've seen this new one. This was therefore the pattern, the actual thing, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is, if hypnosis is just a way to access the unconscious mind, then why am I doing suggestion and persuasion? Why don't I just figure out why you're doing what you're doing? You came to this conclusion for a reason. There's a chain of logic, a series of events. There's something you noticed that drew this conclusion. Fair enough. I'm an intelligence guy. Why am I guessing? All the answers are right there. You know why you're doing it. You know exactly why you're doing it, exactly what you're trying to accomplish. You know exactly where it came from, and exactly why it's necessary. So if you have all the answers, why am I guessing? I'm just going to ask. Show me.
I see.
Right? I'm an intel guy. Yeah. I know how to ask questions and put puzzles together.
That's right.
And you've got all the answers.
That's
and
right.
you want to help.
Yeah.
Because there's no such thing as self-sabotage. Everything you do is to help yourself to the maximum extent possible, to the extent that you understand it, and meeting all needs on all levels of mind.
To survive.
Oftentimes we say, oftentimes we don't know what's going on back there, so we can't give it its due, so we don't understand it. So we say, oh, it's getting in the way of what I want. Yes, because you're getting what you need. Right? So to get back to that thing, you have to get down there to figure out what that thing came from. You have to disprove the old belief first before you can draw a new one.
And your conscious mind can't tell you this, right?
Can't do it. No.
Not only can it not tell you that, but maybe to your point, if I'm understanding you correctly, you have these inner debates going on. So just like for instance, I might admit to something, but then on the other hand, I might argue with myself and say, well, I mean, do you really know that's the truth or not? I mean,
exactly.
As opposed to
two
what you're
scales.
saying. Yes.
Yeah, two different scales. Okay, look at it this way. You've got a big box in your head. Label on the side says, I'm not good enough. And there's a million things in the box.
Yeah.
Okay. Typical approach, take stuff out, stick it in a different box. Oh, I don't feel like I'm good enough. Oh, but I've got a mansion. So it proves this, right? The problem is, like, number one, rational mind is looking at individual events, individual problems. So it's looking at the things in the box, trying to understand the things in the box, which is how we take them and put them in a different box. Fair enough. Your unconscious mind has slapped a label on that thing. Your emotional mind has slapped a label on that box. Everything in the box means the same thing.
Oh, wow.
So you can take stuff out and stick it in the box, but the box is still there. Still got a bunch of stuff in it, right? More stuff gets added all the time. That process never ends. But instead of doing that, there's a label on the box. Why not just figure out what label is there, take the label off, disprove that old conclusion, put a new label on. Draw a different conclusion, the same data. Go from I'm not good enough to I am good enough. So if I take the label of I'm not good enough off the box, I put a new label on that says I am good enough. Now everything in the box means I'm good enough and you're done. Right? If you look at forests and trees again, and your emotional mind moves faster, pattern recognition, incredibly fast. It's setting the frame. It's drawing its conclusion first. It's saying this is a pattern, this is truth, and then moves on to the next thing, and then you have to fight against it. That's why we have to play whack-a-mole all the time. But if you set the frame correctly from the start, you don't have to do this fighting against it because you set it correctly. See what I'm saying?
Crazy. Yes, I do.
So that's what I do, is get down there and figure out, how are you setting these frames? Why are you setting these frames this way?
Yeah.
Because if I can figure that out, take that apart, build it right, now you don't have to do a lot of this work. You don't have to fight yourself all the time.
So the last part of these things that came off of your website, the last one is actually quite simple. It basically says that hypnosis is the solution. So you've kind of talked about it. Can you maybe just tell us a little bit more, give us a better understanding of hypnosis? I would also like to ask in the same breath, what are some of the misconceptions about hypnosis?
Sure. I'd say that, okay, again, the primary idea of hypnosis is I'm going to take control of your mind. I'm going to make you do stuff, right? Primarily because we either look at it from like stage hypnosis, where people get up on stage and doing all kinds of stupid stuff. Yeah. Or we're looking at it from movies, where it's that plot device where the bad guy takes over your mind and makes you do stupid stuff. Fair enough. Yeah. The thing we have to understand is that hypnosis is a voluntary process. You're allowing me to lead you to a place, and you're allowing me to lead you through a process. The reason people are doing stupid stuff up on stage is because they've volunteered to do so. They've decided they want to play the game. A stage hypnotist, when he's getting ready, he's like doing a bunch of stuff, kind of looking out the audience, seeing who's responding. He's inviting those people that are responding up on stage. What do they do? He does some more testing to see who really wants to play the game. Okay, I got 5 people that really want to play the game. They're responding well. Cool. These are my players. They have agreed to play the game. They know they're going to come up here and do stupid stuff. They kind of want to do that. Fair enough. We're on the same page. We're doing that, right? I cannot make you do anything you don't want to do.
Even while you're under, because
you have free will. And
yeah, but even under hypnosis?
Yes, because that's a part of you that has your moral compass.
Okay.
Right? That's the part of you that's most concerned with your survival. And we're making it in more control. We're essentially pushing who's in the driver's seat. We're taking consciousness as usually in the driver's seat. We're putting the unconscious mind in the driver's seat. You're still aware, you're still conscious, you're still there. And the parts of you that are most concerned with keeping you alive in every situation are the ones that are in more control. Why in the world would they let it do something that's going to mess you up? It won't.
I see. Very interesting. By the way, I did tell my wife that if I come out of my office quacking, then we know it didn't go well.
That's boring. I always charge extra for that. That's kind of stupid.
Okay, got it.
And the other thing is this. The other thing about this whole thing is this: is like, if you're fighting your consciousness, if you're at war with yourself inside, if there's a conflict, that means your unconscious mind doesn't really trust you, right? So why would it let you change it? And all the things you want to change are let yourself do stuff that it thinks is bad, wrong, or dangerous in some way. So why in the world would it let you change it?
Got it.
Which is why it's so incredibly difficult to do this on your own. Like, not only do you not have access to where the problem actually is, it ain't gonna let you do it because it doesn't trust you. You need somebody else to lead you in there because that's the only way to get down there, and you need someone else to do that negotiation for you, right? It's like if you're the CEO of the company and everybody's on strike in the union, you can't fire them. Negotiations broke down. You need that third-party negotiator to sit down and say, okay, what is actually going on here? Because a lot of times the reason why we have such problems is because I want to do this, my mind's not cooperating, I'm going to make it do it. We don't take the time to sit back and say, okay, why? We say, why? Well, I'm not good enough. Okay, I don't like that reason. Right? So we do anything else, right? The most powerful thing you can do is ask why and then accept as true whatever the answer is. I'm not good enough. Fair enough. This part of my mind, for whatever reason, believes I am not good enough, and this is the truth it's operating on. Fair enough. Let me figure out why it believes it's true, and then we can see if we can fix it.
I see. So if
Right.
you're in a state of denial, let's just say, then it's
Yes.
pretty
How are you
hard
supposed to fix the problem?
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
Because it doesn't matter if it's true or false. That's not it. That's not it. It's acting as if it's true. It believes it's true.
Yes.
So it's going to keep running as if it's true.
Yes.
Right.
Is it
so
true?
If we accept,
No, I'm sorry.
so if we accept that it's true long enough to fix it, that's all we have to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be true any longer than it takes to figure it out and fix it.
Is it true that the subconscious mind doesn't really make a judgment about what you tell it? It doesn't decides. It just, just takes it in.
No. Like that's the idea of like we can program our mind to stuff like that, and that's not actually true.
Okay.
Again, it has free will. It gets to decide, right? So a lot of times what's happening is like, I'm going to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. What you're actually telling your mind is like, it is too painful for me to not have this. All right, I'm going to give you this thing because it's too painful for you not to have it. Fair enough. Right? Which is why successful people, incredibly successful, give me the success. Okay, here you go. Too painful. It's like it is more painful not to have this than actually sit in the knowledge that you're not good enough. Right? So since not having this is more painful than sitting that, we're going to give you this, right? Because it's less dangerous if I give you this, even if this is true. So what happens is, like you're cutting down trees in the forest, you're creating some space. Great, fair enough. You're actually using pain to do that. The pain of not having, the pain of not being, right?
That's fascinating.
And as soon as you see that, you're like, oh wow,
Yeah.
oh wow,
Can a
right? But it makes so much sense.
Can a skeptic be hypnotized?
Oh, absolutely. But again, it's
Because
you have
that
to
would be
choose.
me. I would be like, oh,
Sure.
okay, we'll wait and see.
Sure.
I don't know if this is
Fair
actually
enough.
gonna
Fair
work.
enough. Cool. So, are you willing to try it?
I see.
Are you willing to allow me to lead you down there? Right?
Yeah.
Because if you're allowing to say, you know what, I'm skeptical, but I'm curious.
I see.
I'll go through the process. I'll do it in good faith. I'll follow the instructions. Then yes, I can lead you there.
I see.
If you're like, I'm skeptical and this doesn't work and yada, 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 okay, you really don't want to play.
Yeah.
Fair
I see
enough.
what you're saying. Yeah. So skeptical, but but again, making a choice is the bottom
Yes.
line here. Is that you're choosing
just-
to allow it to
yeah.
happen, even though you may not be sure, or you might be skeptical, or whatever the case might be.
Yeah. Because in that case, you're wanting to discover if it's true,
Yeah. I see.
not in absolute refusal to accept that it could be true.
Okay. Fair enough.
Making sense? Yeah.
Yes. Do you have well, before I ask this, so what is sort of the process of working with you? Is
Sure.
may I assume that if somebody came to you and wanted to resolve this, one session probably doesn't do the trick, right?
No, but it's actually a heck of a lot faster than you would believe. The
I
work
see.
I do is fundamentally very programmatic. I deliver a particular result. I work with you until I get you there. All right. The result is a core set of beliefs that there is nothing wrong with me and there never was. There's nothing to heal and there never was. I'm good enough as I am to deserve whatever I choose, and I don't have to prove it to anybody, not even myself. All right. And since there's really only 4 things we have to fix, it doesn't have to take very long. Typically, the foundational work to get that is about 3 sessions, 3 90-minute sessions. Okay, that's the foundational work. Now, no way to know how much work we're going to need to do until we get down there and start digging. Sometimes we have to do some work beforehand before we can get in here. Sometimes we got to do some cleanup after. Fair enough. I don't care. You want the result. I'll work with you until you get the result. You pay a flat fee. I work with you until you're there. I don't care how long that takes. Some people are easy, in and out 3 sessions, good to go.
Yeah.
Had one guy came to me, been through all kinds of abuse for his entire life, done some work with some psychologists, really got nowhere. So he's actually bringing all that trauma and all that stuff completely unresolved in this situation. Fair enough. Had to do like 6 sessions of different work to try and take care of that, take care of this, create some space. He's in a lot of pain, got to avoid a bunch of stuff, right? To get him to the point where he could do that core foundational work. But as soon as we got him there, 3 sessions, poof, he's done. But there's a lot of work ahead of time. Yeah. Sometimes you do a lot of work, but there's like a couple of things that are just not falling into place. Fair enough. This doesn't fit. Let's figure out a way to make it fit or how it does fit. I don't care.
Yeah.
You want to be here, I will take you here.
Is it a bit like peeling the onion away,
No. No. And again, you're peeling the onion. Why? Because you're chopping down trees,
Oh, I see.
right?
Yeah.
Why is this an onion?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
How
I'm
do
looking
you
at labels
know
on the boxes.
how do you know what you're looking for? I mean, how do you know if you've
I don't have to
identified
know.
it? Oh, I see.
I don't have to know, because the way I frame it is like, okay, you got this pattern of behavior. Fair enough. You're solving a problem of some kind. Great. Show me the problem you're solving. You're not letting yourself succeed in life. Fair enough.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Show me the problem you're trying to solve. Oh, this. Now I know the problem. I know what to go after. Because this is a set of conclusions you drew that made this necessary. This is the understanding you created about yourself and about the world. If I'm a certain way and the world works a certain way, I have to move through the world in a certain way to survive. So it's that understanding of who you are and what the world is and how it works that creates the behaviors.
Do you assume that they actually know the problem? I mean, if these things have been seeded
Yes,
for
they
so
have
long.
They have to. Consciously, you have no idea. Unconsciously, you know exactly what's going on. You have to, otherwise that pattern of behavior wouldn't exist. It'd be random. There's no purpose to it. It'd be random.
Yeah.
Right? There wouldn't be a pattern. So there has to be a reason. It has to have created on for a reason. It has to have come up, right?
Good point. Yeah, but I guess I don't know that. I'll just speak for myself. I don't know that I would trust myself to know that that is the
Right.
the core piece that caused this problem
Right.
because
Well,
of
for
so
one
many
thing, you're
years
looking
of
at,
piling on.
sure. Well, again, number one, you're looking for a cause. That's not how it works. It saw a pattern of series of events over time. So there's no cause, there's no core. There's just a conclusion, Drew.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't trust it. Why? Because it's telling you stuff you don't like.
Mm. Mm.
You stopped trusting it a long time ago. This is telling you stuff it doesn't like. You don't like. Fair enough. But you've all worked for these bosses who just don't freaking listen, even when you're right. Boss, there's a problem. No. Boss works this way. No. That's what you're doing to your mind.
Yeah.
You're being that boss that don't listen. Same thing. The boss that just says, do it my way. That micromanager, just do what I would say you do. That's what you're doing to your mind. So of course you've got a bad relationship. So part of what this process is repairing that relationship, building that trust between the two of you. It doesn't trust you because you're a bad leader. You don't trust it because they ain't doing what you say. And neither will you understand why. So part of that negotiation, part of that whole piece is creating that trust again.
Yeah.
To where you can understand why it's doing what it's doing.
Yeah.
Because trust me, once you get down there and see it, it makes total sense, complete sense.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Does any of this work in the context of things like, I hear a lot of people talking about, and frankly, I think there's a bunch of snake oil sales people out there on these sorts of things. But when we talk about like The Secret, the manifestations and all these other sorts of things, I'm not saying that manifestations is not happening, but
Sure.
but these are sort of tied together, correct? Like,
Yeah, you can look at things, and the way I kind of look at the manifestation piece is there are a great series of experiments back in Germany in the 1970s that says that we become consciously aware of something happening about a half a second after it happens. Okay, when you take a look at it, it kind of makes sense. All this signal coming from the outside world, your brain's got to like take it and process it and interpret it and then give you, do stuff with it and then give you what's going on, right? So there's a period there where your unconscious mind is essentially doing its own thing with all that. And again, that filtering process is very important. There's too much stuff going on for us to really, it's way overwhelming.
yeah,
So the way I look at things like The Secret, the manifestation, and so forth and so on is getting your mind to say, this is a priority for me. This is what I want. This is where I want to go. Show me ways to get this, right? Show me the opportunities to go here. So there's opportunities to do a million different things all day. If it's not appropriate, it doesn't show you. If it's not something you're interested in, it doesn't bother to show you. So the appropriate that you are interested, oh, boss, here's the thing you want. Here's the opportunity you want. Right? We can all imagine back in high school, that cute girl you really liked, or that, you're walking through just thinking that nobody likes you, and then you hear like 7 years later, like, oh, Susie, she was totally into you. You're like, wait, what?
yeah,
Completely blind to it? Why?
Yeah.
Because that was not an opportunity that was on the table for you for whatever reason.
yeah.
Didn't bother to show you the opportunity to reciprocate Susie's interest.
Very interesting.
Well, if you think you're good enough, oh, somebody likes me, I'm going to pick up on that. Think I'm not good enough, that can't be possibly true, right? So I'm not going to bother to engage with it. Why? Because it's not really for me, right? So I look at that kind of like as a way to tell your mind, I want this. There's a great book called Psycho-Cybernetics. And what it basically says is what the seeker seeks, the finder finds. I'm pointing my thing at this, find me ways to get it.
I mean,
right?
Maybe not talking about the same things, but I do sometimes wonder this. I mean, that's pretty biblical, actually, right?
Yeah.
Seek and you shall find.
Seeking you shall find, right? And what are you doing when you're trying to manifest? I am seeking this.
Yeah.
Right? I am seeking this. Find me ways to get this. Yeah.
And so then how does your subconscious then play into that?
It's the filter of reality.
Okay.
It's the part of you that's taking in all reality, processing it, and then giving you a picture on a conscious level of what's going on.
I see.
So it only shows you what's necessary. Think about like a combat information center on a big ship, right? Got the radars going, the sonars, and everything in the big picture, right? And the captain's sitting there, and what is he doing? He's waiting for the people watching the things to tell him what's going on, tell him what he needs to know to do his job.
That's good.
Right? He's not paying attention to all the pings and whistles and all that stuff. He doesn't care. He's got an idea of where they're going, got an idea of what needs to happen. Great. Give me the data that I need to accomplish this.
Yeah,
To make
there's a
decisions I need to go
storm
here.
that way, so I need to make a decision to go this way.
Yes, yes,
Goodness gracious.
yes.
That's powerful what you're saying. Well, Ryan, tell us about your book, Winner Peace. I like that. It's a play off of Inner Peace. Winner
Absolutely.
Peace is very, very cool title. Tell us about it. What's the full title again? I haven't had a chance to look at
Sure.
it, but I peeked into it a little bit.
It's called Winner Peace, How to End Inner Conflict and Make Success Inevitable. The idea is once every part of you is lined up on the same page, moving the same direction, same purpose, same goal, everything becomes inevitable because you're not fighting yourself. There's no internal friction. All your challenges are out there in the world. And it's all about understanding how that unconscious mind works, how the emotional and instinctive minds work. Understand how we created these beliefs about ourselves in the first place. Understand why they're true the way they are, and then how to start shifting those ideas of I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me, I can't accomplish stuff. Start shifting your relationship with emotions so they're no longer pain and pleasure. They don't have that same power. They become questions. They become, I'm seeing this in the world, I need help solving a problem, which means that not only do you get to engage with them and not run from them, they also help you get where you want to go. So feeling bad becomes a good thing in a really weird way. It's amazing. And that creates a space where things become inevitable. Why? Because either you're getting what you want or your mind's telling you how to get what you want. So you solve these problems faster, you move them faster, right? Yeah, it makes everything easier. And it's all from building that powerful relationship between you and your unconscious mind, getting yourselves on the same page so you can all play the same game. So where every part of you is pulling in the same direction, right? And the book is how to do that.
Yeah.
The book is to essentially take you through the process that I take all of my clients through and give you as much of the benefits of that transformation as I can in a book.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very good. Why don't more psychologists use this or therapists use hypnosis? It's because it sounds like it's a very it's a similar activity and
Yes.
maybe looking for a similar outcome. But if I understand you correctly, basically hypnotherapy is much quicker than the multiple sessions you might have with a
Sure.
therapist to get there.
Well, so the way I look at it is that all models are wrong. Some models are useful.
Okay, I like that.
Hypnosis is a model of mind. Fair enough. The typical approach to hypnosis, again, suggestion and persuasion. I'm going to open your mind, just throw a bunch of stuff in. I don't really see a lot of people doing it the way I do because I'm an autistic guy who like reverse engineers everybody for a living since I was a kid with an intelligence background and access to everything I need to know. Like I'm going to approach that very, very differently than your typical hypnotist, right?
Yes.
Psychologists are coming from what? They're looking at the output of that black box. They're looking at the output of the unconscious mind and they're trying to make sense of it from that perspective. So they create this idea, this framework that helps explain kind of what's coming, and then they play in that space. Fair enough. Talk therapy is actually really, really good and really effective within the framework it's built. And the way I look at things is that it's kind of a sequencing thing. You know, if you're really up in your trauma and really up in your things, and you really have a bad, messed up idea of yourself in the world, you need to do a lot of conscious work to, create, to fix those ideas. So you're making better decisions and have a better understanding of yourself. But you're going to hit a wall pretty soon where that's no longer effective because that's not where your real problems are anymore. And that's when you start using different tools, right? Oh, let's go do some psychedelic work. Why? Because that gets you play down there and do some really interesting things in the subconscious mind, but it doesn't actually require you to face stuff, right? It doesn't require you to do that as a deliberate exploration. Fair enough. Really powerful. And then once you kind of hit the wall here, that's when I think you need to step into hypnosis to do this kind of stuff. Because you got as much benefit as you can here. Time for the next step. So different tools to accomplish different parts of the process at different times.
I see.
I cannot take somebody who's in the beginning and just unwilling to face things and unable to accept stuff and do this work with them. It doesn't work.
Okay.
It's too new. They need to do other stuff to prepare them for the next steps. To do that, right? Yeah, I see this as the end of the journey.
I see. Now, when you perform hypnosis and you have, let's say, a client that they believe they were told all their life that they're going to be a failure and piece of shit and all these other sorts of things.
Yep.
And so their patterns of behaviors indicate that.
Yep.
They're trying to be successful, but these limiting beliefs keep getting in their way and stopping them from being as successful as they perceive they ought to be.
Sure.
And maybe they even legitimately believe that they ought to be more successful than they are. What are you measuring there as a hypnosis? Are you, because the ultimate goal in the client's mind is, or measurement
Become
is,
successful.
yeah, become more successful.
Yeah.
Well, you can't know that,
I
if
don't have to.
okay,
I don't have to. Here's why. So again, my goal is to create a certain set of beliefs. Nothing wrong with me. Nothing to heal. Good enough. Don't have to prove it. If I'm good enough, that means I'm not a failure. Don't have to prove it. Right? Doesn't have to be evidence. I don't have to prove it from the outside in. Right? There's nothing wrong with me. Nothing to heal. Right? That is essentially dealing with all these ideas of like, I'm not good enough. I'm a failure. I can't accomplish things. All those things have to be dealt with in order to get to the set of beliefs. And the way I measure things is, what are you able to do? What is the change in behavior? What is the change in how you're approaching and navigating the world?
I see.
All right. You used to not be able to do this stuff. Great. What do you know? Oh, I'm just like going and doing the thing. Perfect. There's nothing holding you back from doing the stuff you've chosen now.
See. So
That means that problem is fixed,
I
right?
see. So somebody from your end, if they start to realize that they're not procrastinating as much or they're more focused, that might be evidence that,
Yes.
because procrastination is sometimes, as I understand
The
it,
way to
sort
hold
of,
you back from it. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you do it sometimes because maybe you don't think you can be successful
All
at
kinds of different
this.
ways, all
Yeah.
kinds of different reasons, right? I look at procrastination as being one of three things. Either you're doing the wrong thing, not allowed to do that. You're doing the wrong way. That happens a lot. Banging your head against the wall, doing the wrong way. Or you're doing it at the wrong time. There's something else you should be doing right now instead, right? I was procrastinating to the last minute to do assignments. Why? Because I knew it was going to get done in like 2 hours right before it's due. So there's no reason to do it any earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trying to do it early is do it at the wrong time. Got to do it 2
Yeah.
hours before, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you look at all these things as just tools that your mind is using to accomplish a goal and solve a problem, then the individual behaviors don't actually matter.
Very
Right?
interesting.
The question is, how are you moving through the world differently? You used to get triggered by this. Oh, it doesn't bother you anymore. That's a really good sign. Oh, I kind of used to like be successful at this, but now I have this bigger dream. That's really interesting. Don't have to be on the treadmill anymore. Don't have to keep score. This is actually your purpose.
Yeah.
Right. I was working with a client who was a fitness trainer and used to be like all about the physique and the gym and the appearance and all this sort of stuff. Got down there, it's like, man, I just really don't care about that anymore. Like, yeah, makes sense. I was really using this to really make myself feel better. Yeah, makes sense. Away from that as well, in church, back to church, and like got all these Christian guys who like really not in good shape and they want to be healthier, but they don't really want to devote to the gym. It's like, sounds like a problem you could solve. It's like, well, you're right, I can. That'd be really fulfilling. Well, yeah, it would. Purpose.
Interesting. Yeah.
Purpose. You start to understand and follow your purpose.
Boy, purpose is a powerful thing, isn't it?
Boom. Yes. Much more powerful than running from pain. Much more expansive.
I see. I
Yeah.
see.
Pursuing purpose beats the hell out of trying to be successful.
But your lizard brain wants
Until
to
you,
survive and and that's where they go.
yes. And once you remove the threat to ego,
Got it.
your lizard brain doesn't have to do that anymore, does it?
Yeah.
Because there's no pain, there's no threat.
Yeah.
That's that whole piece of that process of like, we're going to remove that threat of ego.
Yeah.
So your lizard brain doesn't have to act that way. So you can move through purpose.
That's fascinating. There's a tool that I use in my coaching and training, speaking, whatever. And it's a basically, I mean, I've seen others talk about it, Covey talks about it, and they call it the see, do, get.
Yeah.
So the basic premise is that, what you see or what you think and believe drives what you do, and therefore that drives the results that you get.
Yes.
And so as a coach, a therapist might go to the see. As a coach, I go to the behaviors, to the do. And the fundamental premise in my way of thinking is that once you start doing things, real quick. So if you're a leader and I'm working with you and you can't seem to get your immediate staff motivated, they seem to be lackadaisical. And maybe part of it is because you look at your direct reports or whomever your employees like a bunch of pawns, and that's how you
Yep.
treat them. And therefore, that's where as the cycle continues, the leader's getting bad results. And it's
Yes.
partly because of what they've created as a pattern of behavior
Yes.
in their own employees. So if they came to me and they said this, and I'm doing this very superficially and
Sure. Yeah.
overly simplistic, but I would look at what are they doing? I say, well, so they say, well, what do I do? I'll say, okay, well, here's this. Try this. Try when you approach them, smile, appreciate them, and maybe ask them for their opinion, and then, if you can, take it on.
Good.
So that's the behavior. And my point to a client is that if you practice this, you'll start getting different results, and that changes your paradigm, your perception. Am I on track here?
You're doing it the way that everybody perceives, and then that's the reason why I think it's wrong. Here's why.
Fair.
You're seeing, okay, I'm going to change these behaviors. I'm going to change how I approach things. Perfect. You're creating a new conscious framework to navigate that piece. Beautiful. You're going to get better results. Absolutely. You've chopped down a tree. You solved an individual problem. A certain approach to a certain situation in a certain way. My question is, great. Why are you so bossy? Why are you so micromanaging? Why are you so have such a need for control?
I see.
Control is about safety. Fair enough. Safety is about fear. What are you afraid of?
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
If I understand what you're afraid of, we can make it safe, which means you don't need control.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Very, very good. That's deeper.
That's where I go. That's where I go. Because if I can figure that out, then I don't have to worry about the individual behaviors. I have to manage that. These are going to change if the driver changes.
I see.
Let's say the fear is that I need to control the outcome. If I don't have control, I can't create the outcome that I want. Fair enough. Are you the one doing the work? Well, no. So you don't have control over the outcome, even if you have control of people. And so, well, that's true.
Yeah.
So you have to trust them to do their job. Shoot, I guess I do.
Yeah.
Because the only way to get the outcome is to trust them. So the control you need is to make sure that they are on board with the plan and invested in the outcome that you're trying to create.
Wow.
That's the way you exercise control.
Yeah.
Right? In that situation.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very different approach. Because that's completely going to change the way you. And oh, by the way, if you want control, what you really want to do is have them come to you when they need help to solve a problem that they can't do on your own. You need to let them do their job, and then you need to focus on your job, which is to find ways that they can do their job easier, better, get the stuff out of the way.
Yes.
That's stuff you have control over.
Yes.
And this means that every part of you is being leveraged to the maximum extent possible. Yeah. And that is what I'm trying to do in your mind.
Got that. So my approach is perhaps, clearly in this discussion is a more shallow approach, although it still may be beneficial from the standpoint that, again, once you start to see better results from treating people better, then maybe you start to write a better script. But that's a little more conscious than what you're talking about.
And what you've really given them is a better tool to control.
Correct.
Better control.
Yeah.
They still are exercising control. They got better tools to do it more effectively.
Yeah.
By not antagonizing this as much. Trade and cooperation, fair enough. It's still a tool for control. You're just teaching them how to do what they're already wanting to do more effectively. You're reinforcing the behavior and the why.
Yeah. Very, very well said. I get that completely. And that the deeper or the more lasting result will be if they go deeper to the why they do it, as opposed to just the tool. That's a good point. Yeah. So listen, I got two more quick questions for you.
Sure.
One, because of the nature of how I sort of roll with this podcast, I just try to follow you, and I, may jump around. So is there something that you think, you believe, or that you'd like to share with the audience, maybe that I haven't asked you about relative to the work that you do?
I think that the one thing I would say is you are more than just your consciousness. We identify with our consciousness and our rationality that we kind of feel that's us, but there's so much more to you. You got that instinctive mind, you got that emotional mind, you got your neurochemistry, you got your physical body, right? Start getting religious, you got a soul. And part of one of the biggest problems we run into is we're judging everything from the perspective of, what do I consciously want?
Yeah,
we're judging everything from this perspective because we identify this is how we're judging things. But once you open your lens, once you open that aperture, once you start looking at the whole of you start realizing what these other things are doing, because you're meeting needs on these other levels.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, I can't stick with my diet. Why? Well, it turns out that I've got this deficiency here, or this genetic anomaly that's compensating for that I didn't know about. Oh, now that I know this, I can take it into account and do things differently. Once you take a look at the totality of what you are, the whole of what you are, and figure out what all those other parts need, now you can move through the world differently, and you can stop beating yourself up as much because you know why things are going on. There's much more to you than just your consciousness. That ain't you. You're this big thing. Start taking that wider view of yourself.
Just I think, and you said this much earlier, you just come to a level of acceptance, and therefore don't feel the need to follow that belief. You know, it's really interesting. When I first got out of the Air Force in 2000, I started seeing a therapist. I'll never forget what she showed me. And what she showed me was she drew a circle on a piece of paper, a large circle. And then she drew a smaller circle inside that circle over here at the bottom, or maybe even protruded the perimeter. And she said, Kevin, this is because I was telling her about things that just really bothered me about me, a way of thinking or believing or doing or whatever. And she tried to show me, she said, Kevin, you need to understand, this is what you're saying. This is only this small part here. You got all of this here. There's this over here that you're loving man, okay, but you act like an asshole sometimes. But that's not this. And so I think that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, well, definitely. And number one, what we do is not who we are.
Fair enough. Yeah.
We're a person that does things.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But if we ask, who am I? And we don't like the answer that we're getting from the inside, we start trying to define ourselves from the outside in. But we're only doing that because we don't like what we see from the inside out. Right? The other piece is acceptance is much easier when you understand why things are. Can't accept it until you understand it, which means you got to do the work to understand it.
It makes me think, Ryan, about spirituality. And like, again, I'm only speaking from a Christian standpoint because that's the journey I'm on. But this notion that, you know, I hear some of the same things in the understanding of what we Christians know, and that is surrendering ourselves to God. There's something very important happening there, isn't there? This surrendering to a higher power, the acceptance that, let's say, if you want to put it in Christian terms, acceptance that I'm a sinner, the exception that, you know, the acceptance that, you know, things aren't always, but if I turn it over to a higher power, they can direct me better. There's still some of that, what you're talking about in that concept, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm making sense. I'm
no, 100%.
Okay.
I was raised Catholic, so I've got that same kind of background. Also done a lot of work in other spiritual traditions, and you know, start doing a lot of exploration with psychedelics. Really changes your kind of perspective on this stuff. We're talking about like what we are. The way I see it is self is soul. Like that is what we are.
I agree with that.
And all these other parts of us are just like projections of, embodiments of, expressions of self. And the game is clearing out all these other like aspects so that soul can express itself more clearly. Okay. So we got really good ways to do that on a conscious level. Different parameters to do, different navigate stuff, right? Talk about like, oh, this is how you can interact with people better. Perfect. Now the soul can express itself more freely. Got really good ways to do that with physical body. Neurochemistry's got really good ways to do that, right? Don't really have good ways to do that on an emotional and instinctive level. That's why that stuff is so tough to deal with. Yeah. Because the only ways to get down there are hypnosis, psychedelics. That's it. Psychedelics are going to take you a ride that they want to take you on. They're going to show you what they want to show you. Very difficult to do a lot of fixing down there. Generative versus restorative. Creating a lot of new possibility, opening up new doors, creating space, not fixing stuff. Hypnosis is the only tool that I've found that gives us directed access to those parts of your mind that allow us to do direct work and actually fix things, actually clear stuff out. And so the work I'm doing is like, this is the one space where we can't clear out well. I'm going to go ahead and clear out and align that so the soul can express itself most clearly through there. Because the beautiful thing is, once you like who you are, you stop asking who you are. The reason why I create these egos, these identities, is because we say, who am I? I'm this piece of crap. Oh, don't like that. I got to be something different. So we create this ego, we create this identity, try and create this, make this true from the outside in. But once you realize I'm not actually a piece of crap, oh, I was just doing things differently. Okay, I can accept this part of myself. Okay, I can own who I am. I don't need that identity anymore. And I just get to move.
And your ego will absolutely lie to you about who you are. Because if somebody says, Kevin, who are you? I'm not going to say I'm a piece of shit, even if I may believe it.
Yes. If you may feel that, if you may believe that deep inside, no, can't have the answer, got to create a different one, right? People ask me who I am these days. I have no idea. I have no idea what I am. If I am soul, there is no way for me to comprehend that on a human level, but there's no need for me to.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have to, I almost have to say I'm a child of God and leave it at that and
Yes.
let people
Yes.
interpret that what it is. So my last question to you, sir,
Mhm.
is where can people find your book? Where can they find you? Who is your ideal client, that would
Mhm.
come to work with you and that sort of thing. So share whatever you
Sure.
like about your work.
My book, Winter Peace: How to End in a Conflict, Make Success Inevitable. It's available on Amazon in all those different formats, to include Audible. People can find me on my website, www.ryanthehypnotist.com. Go read the book first. It's going to give
RyanTheHypnotist.com.
you, yep, yeah. Read the book first. It's going to give you as much benefit as I can there. Once you're ready to really dig in, really clear this out, come see me. Do a free
Okay.
45-minute consultation. Take a look at what's going on in your life, what's working, what's not. I'll show you why things are happening the way they are. We can talk about getting you to that place that you want to be. Ideal client. Fundamentally, I will work with anybody who wants to do this work. If you're called to do this, if this is the right step in your process, come on down. We'll get you to the end. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Two main categories I want to work with. There are the high achievers that we've been talking about, because if we can open up the aperture for these people that are highly talented, highly motivated, highly driven, highly capable, we can change Alex Hormozi to Elon Musk, and the world needs a heck of a lot more Elon Musks,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The second are like veterans, people in the psychedelic space. People have been on that healing journey for a while. They've done everything, and they're still not at that end, right? These are people that know they need help. They know exactly what that they've got that darkness. They're aware of it. They're doing the work, and they've hit the limits of what these other methods can create. Fair enough. Here's the next piece of the puzzle. Let me go ahead and get you to the end.
Very, very interesting. Since you asked that, I now have to ask though, when you talk about psychedelics,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not quite enough because the psychedelics what only expose it but don't actually
A few
get
different
into the
reasons.
work of it, or
Well, no, a few different reasons. Like number one, every psychedelic has this kind of like own flavor and kind of like what it does. So each
I see.
psychedelic kind of works in different ways and shows you different stuff. The psychedelics are going to show you what it feels is most important for you to confront or know at that point in time.
I see.
Okay,
So it may
but it
not
can
be a
only really
pretty
show it.
experience, right?
Oh no, it can be very brutal. It can be
I've
absolutely
heard
brutal.
this about
Right?
what is it,
Oh yeah,
ayahuasca? I've heard people
ayahuasca.
they feel like they go to hell or something
Oh
like
yeah,
this.
they
Yeah,
100% do. If you've
yeah.
got a lot of demons, you got a lot of darkness, you haven't faced that.
Okay.
It's going to say, "Oh, here's where you're actually at," and that can be an incredibly rough experience,
Yep.
right? Which is why it's really important to do stuff with people who really know what they're doing
Know
and
what
can
they're
guide you
doing.
through that. Okay. The thing is, it shows you what it chooses to show you. You don't get to go work on what you want to work on.
Mm,
It takes you on a particular ride. You don't have control of it, which means there's very little work you can do while you're down there to change things and fix things,
I see.
right? Generative, creating a lot of possibility, breaking things up, right? Creating understanding, great. And so you can now move through the world very differently. Beautiful. But if you don't have the opportunity to actually sit down and fix that stuff down there, all those old patterns and stuff are still running, just in a less powerful way, or you can navigate and compensate them better. Fair enough. The other thing is, if you're looking, you're still doing all that analysis and integration as a conscious process. You're looking at individual problems, individual events, individual issues. You're looking at trees, dealing from the perspective of trees, not forest.
Got it.
Rational, some emotional, but you're not getting that emotional instinctive mind, those really high level concepts, which means these things you keep playing out just in fewer ways,
Yeah,
which is why this still has to be fixed, even if you've done a lot of work down here.
I see. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. I get what you're saying now. Well,
Mm-hmm.
listen, wow. Um, this was great. It was great to get an understanding of it, of what you do, of hypnosis, and you really went deep. And I appreciate you taking the time to really just express your point of view and help our listeners understand this. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
people can do what they want, but
Yeah.
fascinating look at, really, I really, really appreciated some of the behind the scenes talk about why we do the things that we do and why we
Yeah.
feel the things that we do, and all of the whys are just incredibly important. So,
Yes.
Ryan Christensen, what a pleasure! Thank you so much for being on Grow Yourself.
Kevin, it was an absolute pleasure. Love the conversation. You're a great host. Looking forward to doing it again anytime.
Thanks so much. We will count on it. So, thanks again.